Hello and welcome. I'm Sue Britz.
And I'm Tina Lookbakk.
Welcome to Retired. It's the podcast where we talk about what life is like when we put on new tread, new wheels that move us to our next adventure. Hi, Tina.
Hi, Sue. We've had a lot of adventures, you and I, the last couple of weeks.
I'll tell you, well, just the technology adventure has been challenging and easy on my side, but I feel badly about uh doing what you have to do, but at the same respect, I'm from what I understand, is you're sitting with looking directly at the ocean, maybe having a nice cup of coffee. That's not so bad.
You know, no, it isn't. What the listeners don't know is just the efforts that it took to get here today. And then we've just spent 45 minutes burning up internet for nothing. But we've made it work now on my telephone once again. So here we are. And yes, I'm looking at the ocean and I should be feeling gratitude, but I'm coming out of the post stress and into relaxation mode.
Okay, good. Well, let's move into relaxation. That sounds better.
We had an interesting idea for a topic today, which is when do you know it's time? And we can apply it to everything. It could be retirement, it could be when to quit a job, when to divorce, when to put your favorite animal to sleep, all these things. And I just thought I'd explore with you our topic. What do you think?
That sounds like a good idea.
So, Sue, when you've had to make some very big decisions, when did you know it was time? Like, are there tools that you were aware of? Or in reflecting back on the major decisions you've made, is there a key theme in knowing when it was time for each of those major decisions?
That is an interesting question because I think it comes back to just kind of that person that I am. I'm a planner and and I think about things a lot. Not, I'm spontaneous too, but I remember as a this responsible young person, raised by my folks, that you're supposed to, when you plan to have children, before you have children, plan on how you're going to pay for their education. Not only the right there when they're little, but plan for their education, things like that. Same thing with when you have a job, put money aside, plan for your retirement. So from the beginning, planning for my retirement was a vision. It wasn't a bad thing. It was a great thing to look forward to because you put all this time and effort into planning
Wow.
it that you are ready for it when it comes. And hopefully financially ready, although along the way all kinds of things always happen, but those are the things that I was always actively planning what my retirement would look like, and when things changed, you readjust, but that was always like a goal. So retirement was easy in that respect, making that decision. What about
And
you?
I want to point out one thing in your previous life, we should call it. You had exciting, great plans. Like your plan when you were going to retire from teaching really was kind of what I'm doing now. And that was beginning another career completely. So I find it very interesting that it went from doing another career to actually retiring. And that probably is because you put in more time into the career. Isn't that true?
Well, I don't know
So
that's
now you're older or
well, I always had planned
no?
on retiring at 55. Uh but and I almost made it. I retired at 59. Um you know, I what happened was that changed everything was, and I think I talked about this earlier, was COVID. COVID kind of shifted everything.
Mm.
And I was thinking, okay, I'm young, I'm energetic, I can do all these things, and I want to do these things. And then COVID through this time where everything was shut down, your life becomes about where you are in your home, maybe in your neighborhood, your city. But it became smaller in the reaching out, but then larger in the introspection um and forced slowing down, you know? We're I'm a kind of a
True.
person that moves forward fast, 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 do, 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 and I always have done that. And I think our country does that a lot, our culture of our country. But it slowed us all down and made you think about what's important. And not that didn't do those things before, think about what's important, but in a different way. And then you start feeling your body, and you're like, well,
Mm,
why would I everything that I was interested in doing would require a toll on my body. Why would I put myself through that? And then thinking about having my time regimented again. I didn't want to do that. And doing your running your own business, you're your own boss, and you have to decide how much energy you're going to put into things. I could see myself doing that more, but even that, a lot of it required um, physical labor that, do I really want to be lifting and carrying and doing all those things when,
right.
it hurts? So, for
So
me,
something,
go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
You go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, no, because well, what I was going to say, and as you were talking and you talked about planning, and it kind of shifted my whole response to, I was going to answer that question too. And I realized it's kind of like the first half of my life, let's call it pre-divorce. I was more into planning. I can't say I'm not a planner. I like to have plans. Um, but I was going to come at it today with saying it's changed in that I'm using feeling to make decisions as opposed to my head making all these decisions. So when is it time?
Ah,
And I think that this half of my life after divorcing and going through a lot of therapy, it's been a reconnecting with how does my body feel when my brain comes up, say, with three plans. And so I'm learning, like, if I write it down and now I'm in tune with how my body reacts, I can pretty much tell you what out of those three plans is the right one based on how constricted I've noticed my body will be, or if I feel nauseous at the thought of one of my plans, or if I feel peace. And that's something that I didn't do for the first half of my life. It
mm,
was truly what I could plan in my head and orchestrate. And now it's more like I come up with ideas, and now I center myself and make decisions on that. And I isn't that just completely wildly different? You know?
absolutely. It's about making yourself a priority again. When you're just starting out,
Oh,
you're a kid. You're 18, 20, 22, whatever. You're a young person, and you have this ideal out there, and a lot of energy, and you're not sure about a lot of things, and you try things out. i- But you're in charge of you. You're letting go of your parents' charge over you, and I got married very young, so I was 21. But when you partner up, then your priorities start shifting to us rather than just me. And you make way for
right.
the other person. I think, eh,
It's
oftentimes
true.
in marriage, uh, especially 40 years ago or 45 years ago, the woman gives up a lot, and that pattern just keeps going, and you don't even realize it. Even when you're trying to be aware of it, you go away. You as a priority goes away because you're giving to your relationship. Then your children come along, and you give to the children, and then at some point, and then you're working, and you give at your job. And where's the priority of you? Somewhere in there, you're a priority, but just not at the very top. You're not at the top. You're number 5 or 10 or something.
I had noticed in retrospect that I would even put, let's say, a cash register lady who's helping me, her needs above mine. I can't give you an exact example, but I'm saying that's how extreme my giving was. It was always about everyone, everyone, down to the stranger, even a dog. Even to this day, I catch myself like if I'm in bed with my dog, I will not move because I don't want to make her uncomfortable. That's how ingrained it is to make everybody and everyone more comfortable than your own self. And you're right. I think this half of my life has been spent on trying to actually put myself in position, at least in the top three now. What a
Wow.
concept.
I totally relate to that. It's and I believe in consideration and kindness and helping other people out. And you get so wrapped into that because that's a noble and good thing. But if you do that at a cost of to yourself, the loss of yourself, I
Yes.
should say, to the loss of yourself,
Yes.
then that's something to look at, I think. Yeah. I totally relate. I get you.
And I'm thinking back about all the moves that I made. Like I got married at 23. I waited longer than you. I bet you we probably met our husbands at that time, same age. How old were you? 17, 18?
I was 8 I was no, 20.
Okay, so you got married a year later.
No, I got when I got married, I was 21, just at the end of 21. Yeah.
Okay. And I met my person when I was 17, almost 18, and got married at 23, but we only had like a 3-month breakup in between. So it was pretty much, if you look at it that way, 18 forward. That's a long time and so
Well,
early,
that's your whole life. It's your whole adult life.
right? So what I realized was that I gave up everything. Not, and I don't blame him. I actually just didn't know any better. That need to think of someone else first ended up creating an entire life that had nothing to do with any of the things I wanted to do. And I think that's something that I wish we could teach in schools more. If we could go into thinking about self care and teaching people, this line between what is selfish, what is not selfish, what is self fulfilling and necessary. And I think we don't learn these things until we've had experience in life and we are lucky enough to see a therapist or get to the right books. But wouldn't it be amazing if we could teach kids to fill yourself and your cup up before you go out there and start getting married and make all these plans?
Well, Tina, it is also tied to you were talking about it's our upbringing, it's our cultural upbringing of the time period we grew up in, and it's also the patriarchy that we live in, the society that is patriarchal. Because I don't think that men necessarily go through the same thing. They,
No, not at
you
all.
know,
The
they,
majority, the
they've got their
majority.
burdens to carry, but when you walk through a life in a system that has your back as a man and your priorities and allows for this systemic loss that women feel, they lose themselves, that's just like considered normal. And everyone I talk to, every woman I talk to says the same thing, that they felt themselves lost, they
Wow.
lost themselves. And you work to recover it in different ways, or along the way you recognize it, and but you're just treading water, trying to keep your head above the water. When a system fights against you, that's really hard to do, and you got to kind of break to do it. I mean, when we talk about that book, which we did say we're going to do a book club thing on, but thinking about
Yeah,
her
I think
book,
maybe I'll go back and reread it. Hmm.
it's so powerful. It's like, yeah, that's I totally recognize that. And so we've got to be gentle with ourselves. You got to be aware. eh, eh, how do you live in a patriarchy and still be yourself? I mean, that's I don't know how that gets done. And our world
And
culture is kind of
and
that
I
way.
think you're right. The beginning now in this half of my life to feel myself, like feel through my body to make a decision is basically, like you said, it's this indoctrination that has shifted. So again, you're right. Even the feeling for yourself kind of gets trained out of you at a very young age to prepare for, I guess, children and a marriage and the life we're supposed to be following if we're going through society steps and standards. But I just realized that that in itself takes the feeling out where you do go into your brain to make decisions. I don't know if I just made any sense at all.
I think yeah, there's sense there. It's confounding because
Yeah,
it
that's
doesn't
the
make
word.
a whole lot of sense. I mean, when everyone, all of society, and pretty much a world culture is putting woman in her place, and that place you're doesn't make sense because you are a whole human. You are a whole being with thought and plans and wish and desire. And you're taught at the same time dogma perhaps or cultural norms of you can be whatever you want to be and but that's not true. And maybe it's true, but there's so many uh blocks in the way, and the blocks aren't always
Mhm.
ugly, you know? They might
That's
be
so true.
that they're just ways to manipulate you into whatever. And yeah, it makes sense. I think women
And
listening to this will understand what we're talking about.
and when you just said blocks, this is what I think is interesting. You're right. We're told we can do anything we want to do. And you're right. And then all of a sudden the roadblock hits. And then you're like, shoot, now what do I do? I can't do that thing that I thought I could do.
Or
And so then you
distractions.
go
Yeah.
to another direction. Right. And then another block shows up and you're like, oh, I really can't do that thing that I now redirected myself to do. And you're right. There's blocks. It's almost like it's the actions and the words don't meet
Yeah, and
because
distractions too, but like, oh, here's a pretty flower, and that pretty flower. I mean, that
oh, true.
block. I mean, it's all a deception. It's like, okay, here's a way to deceive yourself or distract yourself, or as a way. That's another block. So they're not always clear. I
You're
can't
right.
go that way. It's something that kind of pulls at you this direction and therefore takes you away. I mean, yeah,
Where it's like the mirror room at the fair
yeah, yeah. You
and you
can.
don't know which one is really you and which way to turn
Ugh,
because
that
there's so many of you.
that image, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
My. So how do you know when it's your chance to make a decision to retire, to put on those new tires and make changes? I think I've always relied on kind of I intellectualize things. So certainly planning and thought about it, but also there's a gut reaction. Something that's like, this is it. This is the final thing. And I know that it's right. And I've given it enough thought. Um, I think it's also confronting fear. Uh, so how do you know
Oh,
when?
true.
Whether it's something positive like starting a new relationship, how do you know to trust that? Whether it's a job or a job change or having children or whatever your life choice is that retires you, puts a new identity on you. It's about confronting fear, and fear is a powerful tool. It limits ourselves, and society can use it to limit us. Yeah, it's about confronting that fear and feeling safe enough to do it, or strong enough, or believing that there's something on the other side of that fear.
Wow. As you said, fear, that's one of the things I've noticed as I'm here. I'm tackling so many fears in this business and finding out I keep getting blocks, Sue. Everywhere I turn, there's a block. And then you think, or I'm thinking to myself, like, should I be doing this? Like, I've started to question myself, but there's something really grounded in me that knows even though I have all these blocks, there's a rightness to what I'm doing. Don't know how it's going to end up, but there's a rightness to this path that I'm choosing. And, one thing that was really interesting, I just have to go off on another tangent, but I had the opposite of fear in moving back to my childhood home, which I thought was really interesting. I've lived in our Northern California town with you for almost 30 years. And in a way, it was the most peaceful decision to move. It was, again, my body just felt this complete and utter calm. And in fact, when I bought my house back, the decision to make it was also from a place of calm. It was like I just knew I had to do it. There was no question that this was the right thing and the opportunity was there. And it was the right decision. But you know what was also what I thought was a place of calm was trying to go back into teaching before I really jumped into this starting up a business. And and you know what I think it really stemmed from? It was the avoidance of doing this thing that is so completely terrifying.
Yes.
And that by going back into that teaching, it kind of bought me more time to realize that that's not what I want to do. But it felt comfortable and right and peaceful because I think it was the known. And now
Yeah.
I'm so jumping into the unknown. So you're right. I think fear is tremendously accurate.
Yeah, so how much of it is just practicality? This is a way to make some money and make sense, it's logical. And then how much of it is the fear of avoiding something? Yeah, absolutely. How do you know when? Well, we'll come back to this in many contexts. I mean, how do you know when, to get divorced? When's the moment where you say, "Yep, this is it"? Um, that's a whole nother conversation we can have. A juicy one, right?
Probably the juiciest, the downright knowing.
But see, then we're also doing that
Um,
thing where we're um, the fear of discussing that is based on protecting kids, and yet kids
yes.
are grown up, and um, you know, part of it is, and we know this as teachers, the power in modeling and and giving information and understanding. But it's hard to separate that when it's your mom or your kid or whatever. It's a tough thing to do. So it's a dance you have to figure out. That wraps up this episode of Retired. Thanks for listening.
Join us next week on our next adventure in retirement. Until then, please feel free to lend your feedback to ask questions by emailing us at retiredpodcastnewtread@gmail.com. You're invited to follow us on Facebook at Retired Podcast New Tread and check the show notes for links and contact information.
Retired is co-hosted by Sue Britz and Tina Lokkbakk. It's produced, directed, and edited by me, Sue Britz. Music and graphics are by me too. Please click to subscribe so that you won't miss your chance to join
Join our
a retired road trip.
trip.
Woohoo!